Strength training made me run faster, get new personal bests in everything from the 5K to the marathon, and it completely put an end to my injuries. That's when I learned to do it the right way.
Now I'm Nicklas, a former professional athlete, elite performance specialist, and physiotherapist, and I've helped thousands of people get in the best shape of their life. And what I'm about to show you, I've never seen fail to make people faster with less injuries if they do it exactly like I'm about to lay out for you.
So in this video, I want to show you the 3 keys to powerful strength training that I've used and that are all scientifically proven to take your running to the next level without ruining your training. I'm also going to show you how to avoid the so-called interference effect that could potentially ruin your progress in both your running and your strength training. And then we're gonna create a complete training program from scratch that anyone can use that uses all these principles.
So if we want to make a strength training protocol that will make you run faster, get less injuries, and make you more efficient, we want to use what I like to call the PSI system. And if you miss just one of these components, you're gonna have a hard time maximizing your potential. So let's start with the P. For you to understand this part of the system, I want to show you something that my university professor showed me when I first started getting into running with science. You see, efficient running can be explained with a string and a stick. When you run, every single step you take applies force to the ground, and the ground applies force right back at you. If you're like the string and you work hard, then when you apply force to the ground, then watch what happens. You don't get much energy back in return. But if you are like the stick, then for every step you take, you're gonna get propelled forward and you're just gonna bounce right back. So we want to be less like the string and more like the stick. The question is, how do we do that? We need to dedicate part of our strength training to something called power and plyometrics. So if we draw out our training program here, we want to dedicate the first couple of exercises to plyometrics and power. After an initial warm-up and some dynamic stretches, power and plyometrics should always be put first in the program. I mean, just think about Olympic powerlifters and see just how much energy they use and how much power they use to do that one rep. You want to be thinking the same when you go in and make your power and plyometric exercises. Maybe just without the screaming, or things can get pretty awkward, I've been told. Now, power training accomplishes 4 different things for us as runners. It improves your running economy, making you more efficient. It increases your top speed and power. It improves the recruitment of both fast and slow twitch muscle fibers, and it improves your stability and coordination. The specific exercises for a lower body day could be something like 3 sets of 3 to 5 power cleans and 3 sets of 3 to 5 of a counter movement jump. For an upper body day, it could be something like 3 sets of 3 to 5 reps of a shoulder push press and 3 sets of 3 to 5 explosive push-up. That takes us to the next part of the PSI system, and for that I need to show you something. Now, this is Kipchoge in his final kilometer in 2019 when he broke a 2-hour marathon. Besides the fact that Kipchoge is one of the best runners to ever walk the face of the earth, I want you to take a look at his running form. Now I want you to think about your own run. Have you noticed how you feel and look at the end of your runs? Especially long runs? Do you see your heart rate go up and find it harder to maintain the same pace? I know, I used to. It might very well be because your technique has changed for the worse. You see, when your muscles get fatigued, other muscles take over to keep you running. It's really smart that your body does this so that you can keep running, but we want our muscles to be strong enough that they can keep going so that we can keep up that running form even at the end of our runs, just like Kipchoge. And to do that, we need to add a specific element to our strength training that most runners ignore, because they just see it as a fact of life that when you get tired, your running form will also collapse, and that's just how it is. But you and I know better. So let's fix it with the strength part of our system. Now, I don't want you to get buff like The Rock, because that's not going to make you a great runner. Could you imagine The Rock in a set of alpha flies? So instead of building size, we want to be more like a Formula 1 car. We don't want the biggest engine in the world, but we want the best power to weight ratio. And to do that, we need to add compound movements that mimic your running form and are designed in a way so that it maximizes your strength and not your size. So let's get back to our protocol. For our lower body days, it could be something like 3 sets of 5 reps of Bulgarian split squats and 3 sets of 5 reps of single leg deadlifts. For our upper body days, it could be something like 3 sets of 5 of a dumbbell bench press and 3 sets of 5 of pull-ups or bend over rows. Now, before I tell you how to avoid the interference effect that could potentially ruin your run training and your strength, then we need to finish up our protocol with the eye. You see, there are one thing that crushes more marathon dreams and dreams of personal bests than anything else in the running world, and it breaks my heart every time I see a runner sidelined by it. In fact, it's such a huge part of the sport that when I was done with my bachelor's degree in sports science, I had to take a whole other degree in physiotherapy, just so I could help people with this issue. And that thing is injuries. So to make sure you don't get some pain in a place you never even knew existed, then we need to add some exercises that are specifically designed for injury prevention. For this part of the program, we want to focus on core stability, anti-rotation, full range of motion, and balance. So let's get back to our program. For the lower body days, it could be something like 3 sets of 20 reps of Russian twists and 3 sets of 1 minute single leg balance, and that's 1 minute on each leg. And for our upper body days, it could be something like 3 sets of 12 to 15 reps face pulls and 3 sets of 10 reps pull-off press. To make sure you don't waste your time, spend at least 2 days in the gym per week, and then make sure to follow some type of progressive overload, which basically just means add more weight or add more reps. But to make sure we don't ruin our running and our strength training gains, we need to be very strategic about it. So let's talk about what the entire internet is afraid of: the interference effect. You see, in 1980, a guy named Robert Hickson did a study proving that if you do strength training and running, then you will get less strength gains compared to only doing strength training. Now, to me, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, look at it this way. If your body only has a certain number of resources that it can allocate to make you better or recover, then it's going to focus on the thing that it thinks you need the most. So if you run the most, then it's going to allocate most of its resources to making you a better runner. If you lift the most, it's going to allocate most of its resources to lifting and making you stronger. And if you do both, it's going to allocate its resources to make you a better runner and a better lifter. But of course, if you only lift, then it can allocate all its resources to lifting. So does that mean we're doomed and we can't get stronger and run faster? Nope. Fortunately, there are things we can do to minimize the interference effect, but before I show you, I think it's important to say that if you strength train and run, you're not going to get 0 gains and see no muscle growth whatsoever because you run. In fact, for most people, I actually see it benefit them, but of course, compared to not running and only lifting, you will get more muscle mass if you only lift. The other way around is actually not so clear. In fact, a lot of studies have shown that strength training make you run better. But let me show you 4 things that you can do to minimize the interference effect to make sure that you get the maximum amount of progress from your training. The first thing you can and should do is periodization. You see, you should structure your training into different cycles or periods, focusing on different goals. For example, you could dedicate 8 weeks to strength gains and focus primarily on that, and then do a bit less running, and then you can focus on running for the next 8 weeks and do a bit less of strength training. The second thing you can and should do is something called proper sequencing. Now, sequencing is just a fancy word for saying how and when you plan your training. You see, we want to make sure that we schedule our running training and our strength training sessions as far away from each other as possible. preferably on different days. If you can't do it on different days, then do it morning and evening. And if you can't even do that, then make sure to do the strength training before you're running. Otherwise, your strength will just be an extension of your running and will be more cardio based, and you won't have the energy to lift as much as you have to. Now, there are some rare cases where it can make sense to put it together if we're training something specific with elite athletes, but for 99.9% of people, keep them away from each other. The third thing you should do is to balance your high intensity and low intensity workouts. So if you have a high intensity strength workout, then the next workout you do should be a low intensity run. Now again, there are some exceptions and some elite athletes where we pull it together because we need to do some load management, but yeah, don't do that. Just high intensity, low intensity, high intensity, low intensity. It's a great way to structure your training, not only strength and running, but also running throughout the week. The last thing that you must do is to learn how to recover as fast as possible, because that's going to make you so much better, so much faster. And to learn exactly how to do that, you should watch this video next.